Oh, I
Set
just
that up.
stopped. All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And I am Stan.
I'm Lane.
And today we are going to be talking about our Trials of Mana impressions. We've all had a chance to play the game, at least the demo. Most of us have picked up the game. So we're going to be giving our impressions on that. And then we have Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition, coming out on the Switch. There's a new trailer out. So we just want to kind of talk about Xenoblade Chronicles, check out the trailer, that type of thing. Then there's a new RPG from Bandai Namco. It's called Scarlet Nexus, and it's been getting a little bit of talk. So we want to just give our impressions with what we've seen. And then we have two community questions or Discord questions. Both are from Shatera. A, what is your preference in making a completely blank canvas character like Skyrim and playing the role you give yourself, or having a heavily outlined set character that you try to put yourself in the shoes of, more like The Witcher? And then the other question is, do you grow / equip / use your characters in the way a game hints at with the character stats and characterization, or take that character and try to push them in the opposite direction of the class, role, and the game that the game seems to give them? Very good questions there, so we'll cover that at the end. But before we move on with our topics, I just want to bring up Lane. Thank you for joining us on today's podcast. We brought you in just because we know that you covered Xenoblade Chronicles on your own YouTube channel, but also you had mentioned that you picked up Trials of Mana and been playing it. So we wanted to just bring in another voice here to talk about both those things. But why don't you go ahead and give everyone kind of a background on what you do, on basically plug your YouTube channel.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me. It's always a fun time hanging out
Glad
with
to
you
have
guys.
you here.
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is called The Laninator. It's kind of a place for me to kind of fanboy and rant about some games I've recently played and enjoyed most of the time. I haven't done one for a while, but I also do pickup videos. So a lot of times if I'm out at a retro video game store and get some old games, I like to show them off and kind of open up the discussion for what games I should be playing sooner rather than later. So yeah, come hang out.
Very cool. You don't give yourself enough credit. I think you do more game discussions or game coverage than we do. It seems like. So definitely on top of that. Very cool. So there'll be a link to his YouTube page in the description in case you want to go check that out. Highly suggest you do subscribe, and that way you can keep up to date with what Lane is doing. But we're going to move on to our first topic here. We have Trials of Mana. Initially, I picked it up on the Switch, but I got the PS4 version. I just want to go around here and see what version everybody ended up picking it up on, and whether you got the digital version or the physical version. So, Eric, what'd you get? Lane?
So
Somebody?
I got the
Okay.
Switch version of the game, physical. So when I played the demo originally, I played both versions. I played the PS4 version and the Switch version. And I kept telling myself, man, the PS4 version is so much better than the Switch version. It looks way better. But around the time that Trials of Mana came out, I was playing Persona 5 Royal. So I kind of told myself, okay, I'm going to need kind of some balance here. So I wanted to have a handheld game to play like when I needed a break from work or just when I wasn't able to play on the PS4. So that's why I ended up with the Switch version. So
I gotcha. Yeah, I ended up going with the PS4 version just because, the 60 frames per second. That was all right, Eric?
Sorry about that. I had my mic off when you asked that. I was posting our link to the other to the Discord channels.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. I got the Switch version. I like it portable. My bad.
It's all good. Yeah, I was like, oh, maybe he jumped off the call. I didn't realize it. So, anyways, it's all good. Yeah, I ended up getting the PS4 version just because I saw that there was a 60 FPS. Not that I particularly felt like it was a problem with the Switch, but I just figured why might as well get that. But I ended up downloading it digitally because I couldn't find that thing anywhere. I saw the Switch version, but not the physical edition of the PS4 anywhere. And Amazon was giving me like 2-week delivery on that, and I wasn't gonna have that, so I just downloaded it. So
Yeah, I also had a hard time. Like, I think it was that Saturday, the day after it came out. Like, I went to Best Buy, Walmart, GameStop, and nobody had a physical copy. So I ended up ordering it on Amazon on Saturday. They said it was going to be there that next Thursday. It ended up coming on Tuesday. So
huh,
got it a lot quicker than I thought I would. But I was surprised that there were so many shipping issues with
issues.
that game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I know
I
it's
didn't have any problems with like Persona 5 or Final Fantasy 7 Remake.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why that's the case. I mean, it was kind of a hassle though for me to download it on my PS4 though, because I've officially filled that thing up. Like I bought it and then it wouldn't let me download it because and it was like you have to delete something. And I was just like, no, you know, or remove something. So I part of it was Final Fantasy 7 Remake with that 100 GB whatever install, I think. That was a big problem. And then there was also a deal on buying the entire Witcher collection on their PlayStation Digital Store. And I was like, screw it, I'm downloading it. And so I got the entire Witcher 3 and all of its DLC downloaded onto my PS4 Pro also. So I think those two and together with other little things have kind of filled it up. I think I also got Final Fantasy 14 on there also. So that'll definitely fill it up. So how did you guys feel about what you've played? Like your general feelings with the story? What do you guys get with that? Eric, you want to
I
start us off?
mean, if you're going to play this game and expect a really good story from it, you're not. You're not at all. It's not necessarily a bad story,
Yeah.
but it's only serviceable enough to motivate you to go to the next place. And I don't think it really tries to be a groundbreaking story either. I think it wants to excel more in the gameplay than the story. And it's also, I mean, I won't go into voice acting, but but overall, the route I took, I may have taken the typical route, but I kind of want to see what it was. First, I chose Duran as my main character,
Mm-hmm.
and I had Angela and Hawkeye as supporting characters. The one thing that is actually really cool about the story, and I'm kind of more disappointed in Octopath Traveler because they weren't able to do this as much,
Right.
was you pick any two supporting characters, and somehow, some way, the game masterfully makes it feel like those two characters are part of the story. They don't
Yeah.
feel like they're there just to be there. They are. I don't know how they do it. They must just have so many roots, or they find some clever way to add the character in to the story in between like beats of the main character story. But they did an amazing job with that. It feels natural. It doesn't feel like the other two characters are just forced in there because you picked them. Like I don't know what they did, but it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting because, you know, whoever you pick, they'll sit there and comment on stuff. Again, it's like you said, it's not, you know, a deep story. You're not going to have, you know, cutscene after cutscene with just this gripping drama. It's more of a setting piece, I think, where it's just get invested in the world because it does have some pretty good, you know, I don't want to say world building, but I guess you could use that word, but just a lot of different creatures, a lot of different towns, and a quirky sense of humor. It kind of reminds me of a Dragon Quest cousin or something like that in a way because it just has this sense of adventure. But you are right; it does it a lot better than Octopath Traveler with the adding any of the number of characters into your party and kind of adapting to that formula. Lane, what did you think about the story?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in 100% agreement with you guys. The story isn't incredible, but that is definitely not a criticism because the game is a remake of a game from 1995, right? So I think what I am most impressed with the game is how faithful of a remake it is
Yeah.
to the original, while still yet being not archaic, I guess. Like it's still you can come at it and play it and enjoy the game as if it were a brand new game. So that was I really liked that about the game. But yeah, I definitely the reason I haven't played it for a few days, and the biggest reason is because the story hasn't really
Grips you.
been interesting enough for me to want to continue to play it. I kind of been treating it as sort of a comfort food RPG, I guess. Just kind of like if I'm in the mood for a really chill game, that kind of fits the bill.
Yeah.
So, but one thing that I do really like about it is, like you guys have said, I like that there's that character interaction with all the characters. Something that Octopath Traveler certainly did not do very well. But at the same time, I think what I like most about the game is the character customization. So like, I like it feels really simple, but at the same time, there's a lot of depth to it. Like you can really, especially when you get to a certain level where you can start branching out and choosing different classes. I think that's where it really adds a lot of depth to it, and certainly a lot of replay value as well.
Yeah. Eric, what'd you think about the gameplay?
I love it.
The general combat system or the class system, it suits you?
I love it. It's not deep, compelling gameplay. It's but it's fun. It's kind of got the beat 'em up type of deal. The combat doesn't really like I said, it's not deep. You can figure it out quickly. But that does make way for it being really fun on the mechanic side of things. I noticed they do a lot of MMO like features. If you ever play FF14, they use a lot of marks and stuff on the ground for you to look at, so you're always constantly aware of your environment. And they do the same thing in this game. And I think it's really nice because a lot of times, like even in the original game, one of the slight criticisms I had, and it's not even really a criticism, it's just you need to pay attention a lot more in the other one to see what's going on. And this one, they kind of show you. You can argue it makes it a little easier, and that's another thing I'm going to get into also. But I think the concept of itself works great. I think there should be clear markers and stuff to know what you should do or not do with a game like this. It's not exactly Dark Souls, so.
Right.
But on the other hand, the game is extremely easy. Like this is a very child friendly game in that regard, because even if you set it to hard mode, you will notice a little difference.
Yeah, I was curious what you guys thought about that because I haven't really had an issue. I think now where I'm at in the game, I'm a little over 20 hours into the game, and I'm getting to the point now where if I don't quite pay attention to what I'm doing, then I might get into a little bit of trouble. But as long as I'm paying attention, I don't really have too many issues. But I still find it fun, you know? So it does strike a good balance, but as the ease of combat, has that been a negative for you all, or has that been a kind of indifferent about it? Lane?
Well, I know for me, it was kind of funny. I won't say the exact boss fight, but it's kind of right before you get your first class ability.
Okay.
I was like one level too low to where I couldn't get my next class. And I tried the fight. I had no tactics set up. I was just kind of free for alling it, and it didn't go very well. But the thing is like all I did was grind one more level on all my characters, go full tactics, and I freaking wiped the floor with that boss. It went from somewhat difficult to just way too easy, just from kind of being a little bit more prepared for the fight. So
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
I'm fine with the difficulty of normal mode because that's, I mean, like I said, the game is aimed towards like young children, teenagers and stuff like that. So I'm okay with the normal mode's difficulty. The hard mode difficulty is where I have more criticism of. I think they could have done a lot more to make the game more challenging. There's a lot of room in this game to create more mechanics or other things that you have to take care and be considerate of. And I don't think the hard mode takes advantage of that well enough. I think normal modes difficulty is fine. I definitely don't think anyone ever needs to put it on easy unless they have a really hard time with this type of combat system for any reason.
If it's your
But
first game ever, yeah.
yeah, or if you're giving it to a young child who is trying to learn video games, easy mode's definitely there. But
Well, the way I've been playing this game is, I think Lane described it correctly, that it's a comfort food for me, or a comfort game, because I'll just put on a podcast or something and I'll just play the game, going from point A to point B, wherever the story pushes me. And I've noticed that if I do get a little bit of trouble where I feel like, oh man, I'm kind of struggling, it's because I haven't updated my equipment or something like that, right? I'm just plowing through the game. I'm just going exactly where I need to be. But what I like about that, though, is once I go back to the town and I go to the equipment, the shop, I can't describe how much I love the fact that there's 3 weapons available, and those are the 3 weapons that are upgradable. I don't know. I'm kind of tired of these RPGs where it's, you go into the shop and you're like, Jesus Christ. And there's like 17 swords and, ones if you want to be a blue mage, ones like, and it's just like, there's so many different stats you have to look at. There's something about it that just, it's not necessarily hard, but they don't make it difficult either. I think when I play some of the newer Tales games, for example, they make the item and inventory management so convoluted, but then the combat's so easy to where it's just frustrating, At least this game just lets me play the damn game.
Right.
Looking at you, Tales of Berseria.
Yeah.
But what I also like about this game is the massive amount of replayability. Coming back to when you beat the game with like the 3 characters you have to do this special dungeon, I hear, to unlock it, but you do get a new game plus mode.
Mm-hmm.
And you can continue, and this allows you to experiment more with different combination of characters and try their stories. Because from what I hear, this isn't a spoiler, but there are 3 different final dungeons in this game and 3 different final bosses depending on your character setup.
That's cool. So there's a lot of replayability. I've heard that from a lot of people. By the way, I want to ask you guys, I never beat the original game. I played it for 5 hours. And then that was it. I like the art of it, but I was so turned off by the second game. I wasn't a big fan of the second game. So did you guys play the original? Because I know that
I have.
So this is pretty consistent with the original, right?
Yes, this is
literally a
remake.
Okay.
Like everything from old was translated to new. There is the new content is very minimal. Like this is a very, very faithful remake to the original.
See, I like that. I like that they did that they took that approach. They easily could have said, you know what? We stuck the Super Nintendo version out. We released that version finally after however long, and so now we're going to do our own thing. But they're just like, you know what? We're just going to remake the same game, and have it be what it is. Have it stand on its own 2 legs. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, everything. I don't even know how the best way to put it. It's a weird way, kind of what I wish FF7R would be without spoiling it.
Right.
Like, just have it be a remade of the old game with new modern mechanics and like a modern visual of the story. It's kind of just mostly what I want out of remakes. If you want to make it too different, then might as well be a new game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I play the game, though, I do think that perhaps, like you mentioned, maybe modernize the story a little bit, because while I like the way they set up all the characters that you pick, I picked some different characters this time than I did during the demo, just to, get a different experience. And some of the characters are hit or miss. Some of the characters' origin stories are actually pretty moving in the way it's presented, even if it's kind of simplistic. And then some of it, I'm sitting there scratching my head thinking, well, that's kind of dumb.
Telling me you didn't like Charlotte?
Well, I don't want to.
Hey, question. Did anyone here pick Charlotte for their party?
Not
How badly did you want to?
I did. I did.
No.
Want to heal her that badly? That you'd be willing to deal with how she talks?
Well,
I didn't pick that. No.
Yeah, so I picked her just because I wanted a healer in my party. But
well, that's why you're
know that the game was this
struggling.
easy, I probably wouldn't have. Yeah.
That's why you're struggling with the story. You're like, I don't know about this. I don't know if I can finish it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I picked Duran, and then I picked, I don't know, I can't remember how you say her name, but Reese, the princess of the Wind Kingdom. She's on the thumbnail with the green. And then Angela, the magician of the Ice Kingdom. So those are the 3 characters I picked. And I like all 3 of them. They're all pretty good characters, I find. So I'm enjoying it. So did you guys pick the Japanese or English audio? Like, what did you guys go with?
I went full on English.
Oh, you are a brave soul, man.
Look, man, it's awful. It's awful voice direction. I mean, give that script to the greatest voice actors in the world, and they can't make that script sound good. But here's the thing. It's a little bit nostalgic. It reminds me of early day PS1 voice acting and Saturday morning like Fox Kids thing. And I find the voice acting so ridiculous that I actually find it a little charming for how bad and ridiculous it is that I kept it on.
So I played the demo, right, in English. And then at one point in the demo, I was near the end of the demo. I said, well, let me try the Japanese. Just let me see what it sounds like. Maybe I can talk about it on the podcast. And so I switched it to Japanese, and I've never put it back to English. Like it was a million times better. And I think I would disagree a little bit in saying that I think part of the problem is the voice direction, because I just think that some of the mannerisms and humor and just it's hard to direct that to a voice actor, translating from Japanese to English. And the voice direction in this, like all the actors seem reasonably competent. It's very wooden. It's very just direct. Some of the NPCs sound to me like they're just reading off a piece of paper, whereas other ones are just really corny, like Eric's bringing up like a Saturday morning cartoon. But when I put it on Japanese audio, it was like I was watching an anime. And it's obviously because I don't know Japanese, because it's probably corny in Japanese too. But to me, when I listen to it in Japanese, I'm just like, this just feels like I'm playing an anime right now. And
on a serious
it works.
Note, though,
yeah.
There is it's the elemental guardians in particular. Kind of the later ones, I think it was like the water and the fire ones. If you listen to them when you obtained them, like the audio quality, and it sounds like they gave the script to one of us. Say they gave the script to me, and they said, "Hey, you read this. You're a fire spirit," and seriously, that's what they sound like. They don't sound like what they are. It's like when you, at least with like bad anime or something, or bad English voice acting, I believe they at least understand that a fire elemental should sound a little aggressive or like abrasive, like "Ha ha! I am the fire."
Does it sound like George Foreman?
Yeah, something like that. But when you get him, he's like, "Hello, I am the fire demon. This is my elemental," and he doesn't. He seriously sounds like someone went inside a janitor's closet and just read the one take and just gave him the script. And he's like, "Good enough for me." But there's other characters that sound fine though. Like Hawkeye sounds great. Duran sounds fine. Angela, I think, has a great voice actress.
The Crimson
It's-
Wizard is terrible in my opinion. That not the voice acting; it just does not match the character.
I took that as like typical anime villain
Dude, he's
sound.
sounds like a nasally guy that's 58 years old, and this guy looks like he's 16. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
In Japanese, it's way better. Yeah, but
I mean, I can't tell if the Japanese voice acting is good or not. I don't speak the language, so
I think that helps. Ignorance is bliss.
yeah.
Lane, did you go with the English as well?
I did, and so the reason is, and it's the same rule I do for watching any anime. I don't like if I'm reading, I'm not watching the show. So to me, I typically will not watch anime unless it's dubbed. And same with games, I will always do the English voice acting because I feel like if I'm reading, I can't see what's going on. I can't multitask. So that's kind of a general rule for me. So yeah.
You guys suck. You got to try it. Stan, did you go? You went English when you played the demo?
Yeah, I went English when I played the demo, but when I end up picking the game up at some point, I'll probably choose the Japanese.
Dude, it's so much better.
I'm kind of like Lane though. I prefer the English when I can, but
Sure.
I have like a general rule of like 2 or 3 characters. And if there's like 2 or 3 characters where the English like really irritates me, then I'll switch it all to Japanese and just watch the anime or play the game, in Japanese.
See,
And like this game already had, like you said, like Charlotte and the Crimson Wizard, and like there was one other one I can't think of right now, but I was like, we're on 3, like we're at 3, and I've only played the game for 2 hours, so it's like,
yeah, some of
it's gotta
them's
go
not
Japanese.
bad. Some of them's not bad.
I will say the one I can only name a few times in my head that I've switched to Japanese. I think the one instance I can really remember is I kind of have the same rule as you, Stan. If it gets too overbearing, then I have to do what I got to do. And Enchanted Arms for PS3 and 360, early gen RPG. You listen to the English voicing of that for 5 minutes, like you're slamming your ears up against the wall just to numb your ears so you don't have to hear it anymore. And
That sounds pretty bad.
I'm sorry, I have to switch it to Japanese.
That sounds terrible. That sounds terrible, Eric.
Like I'd rather not understand it than listen to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see in the comments here we've had Bandit commenting here. We kind of missed it here, but Bandit said, for me, the ease of difficulty wasn't a negative. The enjoyment I got from this is similar to what I got from a Kirby. So maybe a Kirby game, I guess, which I see what Bandit's saying here. Basically, it's supposed to be a fun game, not necessarily a difficult game. But Bandit says, I think my bigger problem isn't the difficulty, but that a lot of the bosses feel samey. A lot of them I just approach the same way. The different final bosses is how it was in the OG. And then looks like Bandit also chose Charlotte. So you guys are crazy. Bandit also says Enchanted Arms dub is amazing. Go ahead.
So one thing I thought was interesting was as I was playing this game, I was getting like major Tales of Symphonia vibes. I don't know how many of you guys have played that, but the like the whole the elementals and stuff, like they remind me so much of Tales of Symphonia, how you're like going around and unlocking all these different elementals, and even like the names of the elementals are the same, like Sylphid and Golem. So it makes me wonder, like, how much did Tales of Symphonia rip off of this game? Because it's like there's so many similarities that I noticed.
I'm sure if you dig deep enough, there are a lot of games that use those names because they're kind of they're easy to reuse without people calling you out. If you try to use something like Ifrit or Shiva or Ramu in your summoning game, people are immediately going to think Final Fantasy because they're so their names are so known to that title. But if you say something like Golem or Fairy or Sylph or something like that, those are commonly used JRPG names, so they're pretty quick to go to those type of names.
Stan, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that they have their names in those names. They're like all in like different mythologies or whatever. Even the ones that Final Fantasy uses, like Shiva and Ifrit.
Mm.
They're pulling them from different like myths from different cultures, so you can't really rip them off, I guess.
Yeah,
They'll say like we take it as inspiration,
Right. Well, yeah,
So
and when it comes to fantasy, come on now. How many books have copied Lord of the Rings? You have your party that has to travel somewhere with the big evil wizard. I mean, it's very common that, stuff just kind of pulls stuff from other medias and then they make it their own. It's not that big of a deal, I don't think.
Yeah.
could you
I
imagine
do
if
think
I was gonna say, could you imagine if the Tolkien estate just like sued people for using dwarves or elves, right? Like
Yeah.
in their game or their story or whatever.
It would be all over the place.
Just wait till there's enough fantasy material out there. We like sue them all at once.
Yeah.
I was just reading Bandit's next comment. He says the elementals is just kind of a common trope, and I think that's interesting. But really, it's probably it was this game that, or at least it was pretty close to the one that maybe started that whole elemental trope you see in JRPGs a lot.
Yeah, it's in Secret of Mana as well. Yeah,
Okay,
but it's the same franchise. So
sure.
Yeah. What did you guys think about the art aesthetic of this game? Because I like this. It seems like a lot higher budget than the last Secret of Mana remake. And
yeah.
this one is just, I'm all about it. I think it looks great.
I love it. I have no criticism over it. And on top of that, the graphics beautifully translate from the artwork.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when I played the demo, that was the things that jumped out to me the most. That was the
Art direction.
graphics, the art and the music. I'm playing a Mana game in full 3D, but it still feels like I'm playing a Mana game, Even though
Yeah.
they've like drastically changed the engine, for lack of a better word, how it's presented to you, but it's
Mhm.
still familiar, new yet familiar, and that's what like every remake should strive to be.
Yeah. What I thought was really made the difference for me with this game was just the colorful art direction, but also just how alive everything felt between the just a great soundtrack, just reimagined, but also, you have the day and night cycle with just all these various creatures running around and just, there always felt like there was a lot of movement and a lot of just stuff happening. And it just made me feel like like this world was just real and I was just ready to go on my adventure, even if the premise is kind of silly. It just, I don't know, it just felt right to me. So
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt whoever was in charge of the art direction of this game, top notch. You did a fantastic job.
yeah, yeah.
And it's beautifully translated from the original game too. Like the original artwork.
Okay.
Like they're very faithful to the original design while giving them a modern art style look at the same time.
Yeah. See, that's the thing too that I'm surprised they pulled off, because if you go back and play the original, while I wasn't a huge fan of it at the time, I always did really like the graphics or the pixel art in the original. I thought it was just gorgeous. So that's something where it feels to me that you wouldn't need to remake, right? And like going in this direction, you might make it worse, but it captured it just fine to me. It feels perfect. It feels right. So awesome job. Is there any leftovers with the Trials of Mana that you guys want to bring up about anything you forgot to mention?
Music's really good.
Yeah, the music is really good. I even went back and switched between the original MIDI soundtrack and then these new versions, and I think the new versions are really good too. Sometimes,
I think both tracks are really good in their own way. I don't want to take credit for this, but I believe Pro Jared said it in his review that they did how you do a remastered soundtrack from a MIDI soundtrack, right? Is you take when you find what instrument that theme was trying to use, and you just translate it with that said instrument, and it naturally sounds like a remastered track, and that is what this game did. It figured out what instruments it was trying to imitate with the MIDI sounds and beautifully translated over. But the original still sounds amazing too. So it's really what you prefer. Do you prefer the old classic style or the new one? I don't think you can go wrong with either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's not, like, I noticed they reuse a lot of the same tracks, but all the tracks that are there are really good. So I really enjoy that. So it's good. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to Xenoblade Chronicles. So we got the definitive edition that's coming out on May 29th, and we want to kind of break down and just kind of talk about Xenoblade Chronicles a little bit here since it's coming out. And I just want to give everyone a little bit of a breakdown of the premise of the game, just so they can kind of see if this game is going to be for them. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the game itself, and we'll talk about the new trailer they released, etc. But the setting of this world, I'm interested if you guys have anything to add to this, but the setting of this world is really high fantasy because it takes place in what's called in the game an endless ocean. So it's literally an ocean that just goes on, it seems like forever. And there's these two huge colossus stone gods that are fighting, right? And for whatever reason, they end up frozen. They're not moving anymore. And life just starts living on these colossus gods. And these things are like the size of a continent, right? They're not just the size of a mountain or anything. These things go on for miles. So there's all these people that are, and all these different creatures that are living on these two colossus creatures. And you have Bionis, which is mostly, actual, as it sounds, bionic life forms, right? Whereas Mechanis, it's more, robots, sentient stuff like that. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, and they're at war, right? And they're basically, Bionis is not doing a very good job, but there is one weapon that they do have called the Monado that is especially powerful against Mechanis, and that's basically the setting of this game. It's a very crazy setting. If you want something that's very opposite of what we were talking about earlier with the Tolkien-esque type tale, I mean, this is totally off the charts new, right? And because they're living on these colossus godlike creatures, right? You get all these crazy level designs with all these paths going up into the air and stuff. And it's really, really cool. But the game came out on the Wii originally, and Eric was actually took a hand in a small way in getting that game over for us originally in Operation Rainfall. Do you want to kind of give people a breakdown of what that is while I get this trailer up?
Yeah, so what Operation Rainfall was, it's essentially there was a time back then in the late 2000s, early 2010s, where Nintendo of America specifically, not Nintendo, all of Nintendo, but in that way specifically, did not have any interest in releasing 3 JRPG titles over to the West. It was Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower. These were 3 games seeked heavily by the JRPG community. And when Nintendo was either silent or came out and said, no, we have no interest in doing it, a lot of people signed up to get their voice heard through a campaign called Operation Rainfall. They created a website, they created forums, they advertised themselves everywhere. They got recognition from major sites like IGN or GameSpot. Like, they definitely got the attention of major news or gaming news media. So it got a lot of attention. I was certainly throwing what I have to say into their main website and forums and such. I wasn't officially part of anything in there, but I was a frequent speaker in there. And eventually one day Nintendo was like, "Okay, you win. We're bringing them over." and we got them eventually. I believe we got Xenoblade first in 2012. I think maybe.
I think it was, well, yeah. I don't know, 2011, 2012, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere around there. And because I got the European version first, so I wanted to play that game that badly.
Back when you lived in Europe?
I lived in Europe. Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm just being silly. Or you said you got the European version, so
yeah, I imported the game.
yeah.
But
but yeah, work with me here.
Come out here. All three, it eventually worked out, and thankfully, I felt like it was worth it because Xenoblade is one of the great. It was, in my opinion, the greatest JRPG to come out of that gen.
Yeah,
and I'm glad everyone got to be able to play it. And I think it worked out well for Nintendo because they keep re-releasing it any opportunity they get. The Wii, the 3DS,
yeah,
the Wii U eShop. There's already 3 different ways to play it there. Now they got a definitive version
right.
of Switch. So, and I feel like that's not gonna be the last time we see it either.
No. Lane, since well, we covered it on our channel, but you also did a video on this game as well. Do you want to kind of summarize your thoughts without spoiling the original game here?
Yeah, so
I know you said you hated it, right?
Oh yeah, I hate the game. It sucks. Don't listen to any of these guys. No. So yeah, I played it. I tried playing it a couple times. So first I tried playing it on the Wii, and didn't look very good on an HD television. So that was kind of was a turnoff. So I ended up buying the 3DS version of the game, and I was enjoying it a lot more on the 3DS, mainly because I was a little late in the 3DS generation. So I bought a Nintendo 2DS when they went really cheap when they started selling Nintendo Switches. So I bought a DS around that time, and I bought Xenoblade Chronicles for that system as well. So I was really enjoying portable games mainly because of the Switch. So anyway, got that version of the game. Almost beat it, didn't quite beat it. I got to a point where I was really underleveled, and one thing I didn't like about the game is it's very punishing when you're underleveled.
Oh yeah,
very punishing if you don't level your affinities levels with characters. I was at a point where I needed a certain character to beat this boss, and I had talked to him the entire game hardly. So we weren't friends at all. So
yeah,
like I had to go back and do all these affinity stuff, and I was just like, no, not interested. So
I'll tell you this without spoiling. If you there's 2 characters in the game you would consider tanks, and one of them excels in evasion taking. If you go out of your way to make him a good evasion tank, he can pretty much take on almost anything in the game.
Interesting. I know who you're talking about, so I might have to keep him in my party for if I end up getting the Switch version.
There are times where some bosses can just go straight through the evasion, and you have to have like the defensive tank out. But a lot of times he can just evade everything, and it's just an easy time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Stan, since you are the gameplay guy here, do you want to kind of break people down into what we're talking about here for people that may have not played the game? Maybe they want to kind of get an idea what the gameplay is like.
Sure. So the easiest way I would describe the game is you've got exploration and combat. Pretty much like 90% of the way you interact with the game is those 2 things. You've also got some kind of like NPC character building, like a relationship chart, but that's kind of like very optional, So for the most part, you're going to be doing exploration and combat. And on the combat side of things, it's the easiest way I can describe it is like simplified MMO style combat, where you have your characters all have abilities that they learn as they level up, and those abilities are on a cooldown whenever you use them. So you'll have strong abilities that you can use, and then you'll have to wait 90 seconds or 2 minutes, before you can use it again. Then you'll have other abilities that you can use more frequently. And if you don't use any abilities, as long as you are in range, your character will auto attack the enemy without you having to do anything. Like as long as you put the character close enough to the enemy, they'll attack. And what else? 3 characters in combat at a time. You can use what's called a chain attack to like link a bunch of abilities together and do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
That's very satisfying. And in general, though, what Lane was saying is correct. Unless they drastically change the difficulty balance of the game, it's kind of like if you're, say, 4 or 5 levels under leveled, it's almost impossible like to beat the boss, because the boss will have like an evasion stat that you're just not able to hit them. You're not able to do damage. But if you're 4 or 5 levels too high, then every battle kind of will feel like a cakewalk, because the enemies generally won't be able to hit you with their physical attacks. Yeah. So
who's willing to bet they made the game easier? I know they're not going to straight out tell us, but if anyone's played Xenoblade more than once, I'm sure are going to be able to tell if they made certain bosses easier or not.
Well, it's weird because I like the structure of the game, because I like that if I go the extra mile and I do all the extra stuff, that I'm rewarded with, basically a stronger character, right? And a smoother story experience. But I did all this extra work on the side. And this game has a lot of extra stuff with the affinities. And then you can get the mini reactor. So there's all this crafting system in it. And, there's all sorts of things that you can do to, kind of flesh out your experience here, and it'll make the game easier for sure. So that's going to be a tremendous undertaking for them to balance it. I guess that if they balance it to where it's easier, then you're just going to be super OP, I guess. But if you do all the extra stuff, it's going to be wild. I really did like, though, the arts where they would actually incorporate basically their special abilities that would incorporate elements of the story into the move. So like the earliest move I'll give, it's a slight spoiler, but not really. It's one of Shulk's earliest moves is he can see the future, right? So that'll be a move to where it'll show an enemy is about to kill somebody, or they're about to use some big attack, and you'll see 5 seconds into the future, and then it'll come back to Shulk and you'll have to react and try to stop it. And it's really cool because that happens in the cutscenes, but then that also happens in the gameplay. And there's all sorts of little examples like that I thought were really, really cool with this game that made it a standout for me.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, good use of that. Incorporating it in both the story and battles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, one thing to point out is that compared to traditional JRPGs, it has some systems like simplified. So, for example, there's no MP in the game, right? The character's abilities, all that you need to use them is to have that cooldown refreshed. Once the cooldown is refreshed, you can just use the ability, and then you have to wait. So there's no MP cost for anything that you do. Even characters that have magic, it doesn't cost them MP. It's just an ability treated the same. And because of that, there's no items in the game either. So you can't use any items to heal your characters, because any items you pick up are just collectibles that you use for other things. You don't use any items in battle at all.
So one thing I'll say that I actually really loved about this game was the fact that when you die, you don't get a game over. You just basically respawn right next to the enemy boss too. Yeah, I thought that was like,
dude, that saved me so much, because there were quite a few boss battles where they would literally introduce a new move that you had to use to beat that boss. And it would be like, all right, now try it in this boss battle for the first time. And, and I would die because I'm like, this isn't a good place for me to try this. But it would start you right back off before the boss. So, it wasn't, you didn't lose a bunch of progress.
Yeah.
That is what I like. The game is tough, but it is fair at the same time. Like if you like, I can't recall a time in the game where I died and I was just getting overly frustrated. Like I get like every time I die and I get back to like just a few feet away from where the boss battle was, I'm like, okay, I need to figure something out. Either I need to get more levels, I need to change my setup. Like obviously he's breaking through the evasion. I need to get Rhino. I need to
It's Rhine time.
keep my distance more.
Yeah.
Look, it's always
Rhine time. You will, if you play this game for the first time, you're going to hear all these little battle quotes, and it will just be ingrained into your head.
Yeah.
And they're great. I'm sorry, Eric. Keep going.
No, I was finished.
Oh, you were finished? Okay.
Yeah.
Stan, did you have some more stuff you want to?
Yeah, pretty much covered the combat. As far as the exploration goes, it's also pretty important because as you explore these very large maps, it's kind of zone-based, similar to Final Fantasy 12. Just think much, much larger maps than Final Fantasy 12. And it's linear, right? So it's still a linear path, but it kind of you enter a new area on like a linear path, and then it like opens way up. But as you get towards the end of that area, it funnels like back down to a single exit point. So it's kind of like big. It would look like big bubbles with like little linear segments attaching them all, essentially, if you were to look at it like from a top-down perspective. And there are fast travel points all over the map. And typically, when you discover them, it counts as a new location. And for discovering new locations on the map, you get experience and skill points for your characters, which is like not something typically that most JRPGs do. And so that makes the exploration even more rewarding because instead of just grinding in an area for 20 minutes, right, you can instead just try and find all the explorable points, like all the location points. And some of them are considered like hidden locations, and it'll pop up and say like you found a super special area, and it will give you like a lot of experience for finding that spot. And so that helps to like increase your character's levels faster simply by just exploring the beautiful maps they made. So
I cannot imagine playing that game without fast travel. The maps are just so enormous. Like, can you imagine having to go all the way back to the start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, if I remember correctly, when I played it, I played a decent amount without realizing I could fast travel. And once I realized I did, I was like, oh, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
Because
I'll be right back.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. All right. So yeah, I mean, this is, dude, I really enjoyed this game. I didn't even play it till we talked about it for our podcast, and that was about 2 years ago. And I emulated it. I'm not gonna lie, I emulated it on a Dolphin emulator. Played it in 1080p. Looked great. Looked fantastic. And I was able to enjoy it even then. And I think the biggest takeaway for me was just the story. Aside from the gameplay was really good, like all the things, we talked about here. But the story, it's kind of wild, but it's just so complete feeling, I guess, for me. It really just like some games like you get are Trials of Mana like, and that they have like a cool premise, but then they don't really go anything past that, and it's just really a premise because it's a video game. This is like, this could have been an anime or or a book. The amount of focus on story here was really, really tight. But I guess my biggest criticism was just how long the dungeons are, because there's so many dungeons and they're very, very long, but they're all uniquely designed with like unique textures and stuff. So it's, it's kind of a backhanded compliment, I guess, but I really enjoyed it.
I agree. Like, for me, the story was amazing. Like, I had no complaints or criticisms on the story whatsoever. For me, it was like you said, just I wish that, and these are a few things I guess that I hope that maybe the definitive edition will address, but I didn't like how side quests don't really have any direction to them. It's kind of like you kind of seem to happen across the item that you're looking for, or if you need to go talk to somebody, it's not really clear where they are. And one thing I actually thought was interesting that was in the trailer, it looked like they added some sort of chart, affinity chart for the side quests. So I'm interested to see if maybe they kind of add a little bit more direction to the side quests. And if that's the case, that definitely makes me a lot more interested in buying it day one. And like another theme that I hope they kind of fix is the inventory management. Inventory management was terrible. Like you'd have to deal with so much junk and so many equipment that you kind of min and max, spend a lot of time min and maxing. And I hope they really fine tune that. And I mean, if they address both those things, I will buy it day one.
Yeah,
the game really dumps equipment on you, like from all the monsters you face. They drop a bunch of treasure boxes, and you're always picking up different swords and armor pieces and everything. And it gets to be a lot, to the point where you have to just go to the shop or whatever and just like dump 30 pieces.
Yeah, like I would
armor.
like dedicated shop time, and I felt like I'd be there for like 30 minutes, just min and maxing, and then like trying to figure, should I sell this? Oh, do I need this for a quest? Oh, I better keep that.
Dude, you're not kidding. So basically, with this podcast and me playing the game, we had a vote, and we put some games out there that we might discuss. And Xenoblade Chronicles won, right? So I was like, okay, I got to play Xenoblade Chronicles, and I was feeling terrible because I was like, oh, we'll have it done in like a month. Month goes by. I'm like, oh, just give me another week. And I kept saying, give me another week for like 2 more months, because this thing kept going on. And the thing was, I would literally have like, okay, today's Thursday. I can play for an hour and a half tonight. And I would boot it up, and I would sell stuff at the shop for almost like the entirety of that play session, just because like I needed to do that. And it would take, so much crap to sell and stuff. And then the following night, it would be story night, because that night I would, go do the boss and the dungeon and everything. So it's definitely very, very busy. But I haven't played the second one or the third one, however you want to think about it, but Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But from what I understand, that game is the exact same situation. It's very, very busy with inventory management, and you can sit there and tinker with practically everything. But I mean, I
quite dislike the second one.
Okay.
For many reasons, but we'll go into that.
Yeah. I mean, like I did like certain aspects of it. I mean, I went and did the extra side quests. So I got in the game, there's this thing called there's a reactor that you can make special boosts, I guess, that you put on your equipment that boost the equipment stats. And you have to go back to this town to do that. And there's side quests you can do to get what's called a mini reactor that you can carry around with you. So you can do that anywhere. So I did all that side questing just to get that, which was very padded out. Took a long time, but I had fun once I got that thing and I could tinker around with stuff. I had a blast filling out the little scrapbook. Every area would have a scrapbook of items. Did you find this? Did you find that? And, it would just annoy me that the scrapbook would have 2 missing items. So I would just fast travel back to that area and be like, where's that damn turnip? Let me find this turnip, and I would find it, and, it would complete the page, and I think you would get some kind of reward. So, but it was a good experience. It definitely stood out for me as one of the better RPGs that I've played in a long time. But as far as what Lane was talking about with new stuff, I know that the biggest thing that I saw was, aside from the overhauled graphics are completely redone, which hit or miss. I like the environments, but the character models I'm not too crazy about. But there's new story content that they're adding. It's called Futures Connected, and you don't have to beat the game to be able to play it. So if you played the original, you can play this new story content before playing the main game again, which is cool, but it takes place 1 year after the events of the main game. And basically it's giving you access to a complete new area on the map that previously was inaccessible. So that's pretty cool. And it looks like there's some actual story stuff there, because it looks like the voice actors came back for their new lines. And so new story content in this edition. I'm all about that. That's something I wish more games would do. I'm glad Xenoblade's doing it. Dragon Quest XI did it, but I was hoping we were going to get that with things like Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age, for example. I thought that game could have used some extra cutscenes, and after they redid the battle system and stuff, it would have been cool if they could have had some extra story content. So I'm glad that we're starting to see this as a trend where not only are we remaking the game, we're adding another however long, another story sequence to it. I think that really gives it a reason for me to buy it. But are you guys?
Have they said how long it's going to be? The extra content, like how many hours?
I haven't seen anything regarding that. So. Yeah, I know that the area that they're giving us access to is fairly large.
Okay.
And apparently, the area we're given was cut content from the original.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know how big or how long it's going to be.
Well, it's the Bionis. It's the Bionis shoulder, so the Bionis is pretty big. So
if I had to take a guess, probably 10 to 15 hours is going to be my guess.
And that game's already a 100-hour game easily. So or I don't know. I kind of dragged my feet. I know other people beat it in 70 or 80, but
man, I just finished Persona 5 Royal, and that took 110 hours, and I don't know if I'm ready for another 100 hour RPG.
That's the one reason I have not played that game yet. Because I keep thinking, when I have enough time, I'll play it. And I keep looking at my schedule, like, when am I going to have 110 hours?
Yeah, right.
But Eric, are you looking at picking up this version of the game? I know we're kind of not crazy about the
so much. Like I said, I just came back. I know you guys talked about the artwork a little bit, but I'm okay with the artwork overall. I won't say it's better than the original. I think it's a little too light for my taste, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah.
Like it's I thought they translated the artwork better in the original, and they made Shulk look a little younger.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, when he looked like he was like fairly between like maybe late teens, early 20s. Now he kind of looks like he's in the 16 to 18 range.
Right.
No, but it's really not a deal breaker for me whatsoever. I think a lot of other characters look good.
Sure.
On top of that, like Dunban looks really cool. Ryan and what the name Charla.
Yeah.
Like I think most of them look good and translated decently. Yeah, it's just there's some minor nitpicks I have, but I'm not gonna be one of those people that are like, oh, they completely ruined the artwork, I can't play it.
You know what it is? It's when I watch the trailers for the new footage, the environments themselves, I do think the environments look better because the environments are much more detailed. They're much crisper. A lot of times in the original, it would use effects like if they wanted to show metal being reflective, they would just draw on a reflective texture. Whereas now in the Switch version, it looks like there's actual reflection going on in some of the textures that are supposed to be reflective. So in terms of the lighting and stuff like that, it seems to be much better. So I can see where people are coming from with that, saying this game looks way better because I just think the environments look much cleaner and crisper and brighter, and that's really good. But I'm with you on those character models. They don't look bad at all, but just knowing in my mind that they looked, at least Shulk did look older, and I think in the original, it kind of bothers me. And it's not badly done. It's just the smoothing out of the face. It's kind of like somebody that gets plastic surgery too many times, right? And they've pulled back their face so many times, and they, all of a sudden now just their eyes move and their mouth, but like they don't have any facial expressions. I don't know. It's in the original when he would squint his eyes, there would be, black textures under his eyes, and you'd see the ridges around his eyes, and you'd see his cheekbones and stuff. And now it's kind of smoothed out, which is stylistic choice, but as a result, it does make him, I think, look a little younger, which doesn't quite sit well with me, but everything else just looks great to me. So it's not a deal breaker for me either.
Yeah, for me, it's like I don't really mind the art style. I'm just glad to see the game look good because both the Wii and the 3DS version don't look that great.
Did you play the Dolphin version?
I actually I tried it. I did like the 1080p, I did the texture mod, and I even did it like where you could replace all the button overlays with PS4 controller buttons.
You didn't like it?
For some reason, I could not get it to run a steady frame rate, so I kind of just gave up on it. I think I maybe went a little overboard with the mods.
Yeah, some of this got a little excessive.
I tried, and it did look really, really good, and I definitely understand why you went that route, but yeah, I wish it would have worked a little bit better for me.
Yeah, I will say if you don't care about the extra content or the balanced content and you really don't like the artwork of the game, I would most definitely at least play the game again, like Had said on Dolphin. And use the HD texture mods and the what was the mod called? It was like a UI HD mod for it.
I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, there's one out there that updates that.
To play the original game.
Well, and if you feel bad about, playing it on an emulator, you can always go buy this version on Switch. That way they get their money for the game, and then you can just play it on, download the Dolphin emulator if you have a version to play on there as well. So
yes, do not do anything I say unless you own the copy of the game.
Yeah.
Unless you are using a physical disc provided by Nintendo.
Or Craigslist, whatever works. Stan,
wink, wink.
Stan, are you gonna pick this game up on May 29th?
Yeah, I'm planning to get the game. I'm not sure about on release date. My sister is actually buying the game because she's a big fan of the original game as well.
Oh, interesting.
And, she's into collecting, so she likes to get like the best editions of any game that she like buys brand new, and she's importing the like collector's edition from Europe because I guess they have some different they have some like extra bonus features.
Oh wow!
For that the US version of the like collector's edition doesn't have. So I may have to wait. Yeah, I may have
getting it from
Europe. Right. The more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I might have to wait a little bit longer for it to arrive.
Well,
than May 31st, but I do plan to play it close to release. Yeah.
Very cool.
And then just the one thing that to touch on, because you guys mentioned the UI in the Dolphin version, there is an enhanced UI in this version, in the definitive edition version of the game.
That's a good thing to point out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good improvement also, because the original game's UI, you spend a lot of time in those menus, and the backgrounds are just kind of very brown. I remember the very boring backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
So it looks like they cleaned them up, and they probably had to, just because of how small the text was on the original game. And if you're going to, this may still be a problem anyway, but I'm guessing they made new UI to try and address when you play it in portable mode.
Makes sense.
Because you need things to kind of pop more off of the portable screen,
Yeah.
for people. So
could be. Well, we know it's gonna be at least 720p on the handheld, or it could be even lower.
Yeah, hopefully, I was gonna say it's probably a dynamic 720p.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll probably be 720p and dynamic 1080p on Switch. That is a pretty graphically intense looking game.
Yeah.
I mean, then again, so does Zelda, and they get that game on there just fine.
It's true. That's very true. So, yeah, I'm excited to play this. I'm excited to pick it up. What I'm really excited about is to play it with an actual Nintendo controller, because when I played it on Dolphin, I played it with a PlayStation 4 controller, and I had to program all the Wii buttons to my PlayStation 4 controller. And man, oh man, did I forget where I programmed half those buttons half the time. Because it would be use the Z button. I hadn't used the Z button in 8 hours. So I'm pressing all these buttons on my controller.
You should have got the PS4
Controller
button.
right here.
What's that? I should have got the PS4 mod.
Well, they had a mod. One of the mods, I don't know if it was in that package with the HD textures, but they had one where they replaced all the Wii buttons with PS4 buttons. So as long as you mapped your buttons correctly, it would actually show. It basically looked like you were playing it as a PS4 game. It was pretty slick.
Yeah, I held off on that one. I should have put that one in there. Eric, did you buy a Nintendo controller that you can use with PC? Is that what you were showing me?
Yes, this is what you need to get right here. It is a beautiful controller, 8-bit Do controller.
Yeah, I saw a little bit about that. I was tempted to pick it up.
If there was a controller, if I can give the Wii the biggest compliment with its controllers, it's actually not its remote. They had a Wii Pro controller I loved because it had the D-pad right here, the buttons right here, and it had analog similar to Sony on it. And I thought it was such a great controller to use, especially for older games. And now Nintendo likes to do the Xbox route where they put the D-pad here and the analogs shift into different places. And it's hard to get that same feeling with a Nintendo controller. Oh, by the way, we're not sponsoring these things. Or they're not sponsoring us, I mean.
We're not getting paid.
I really like the controller.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you really want a good Nintendo-like controller for PC, this is amazing. It's only $50 too.
Very cool.
Yeah, I remember I bought a when I played the original Xenoblade Chronicles. I bought a that I think it was called the Classic controller for the Wii for this game. Because if you don't play it, if you try and play it with the remote and nunchuck, you don't have a second joystick to manipulate the camera. So have to push a button and then use the left joystick to move the camera around the character.
Nope.
But that means you have to release that button to move at the same time. So you can't move and adjust the camera at the same time. And that's just a no-go for me. I'm like, no, I'm not going to deal with that. So I actually went out and bought a controller, a controller that I had no intention of using otherwise, because for other games like Smash Brothers or stuff, I could use a GameCube controller. But I remember for that game, I had to go out and buy this other controller.
See,
I did the thing when I bought the Wii version of Xenoblade. I bought that classic controller, and it was okay, but going from the new controllers to that one, it just feels so light and fragile.
It is, yeah.
I really like about it.
The one I use, and well, I was speaking in particular, I don't know if any of you got Monster Hunter 3 for the Wii, but it came with a black controller that had the handles on it. That's the one I played with. That such a great controller. I was so disappointed with the Wii U Pro controller because first off, I couldn't even reach my thumbs over to the D-pad. That's how bad the Wii U Pro controllers were.
Yeah.
I can't believe I owned 4 of them.
See, I've never been really a Nazi with my controllers, but I will say that once I got the Switch Pro controller, I felt that I suddenly understood why that thing was invented. Because I don't know, I was just like, what? And the Switch comes with these 2 little joysticks. I just stick it in the little thing that comes with it. I don't really like it, but I'm not spending more money. And I kept playing games like that for 2 years until I bought the Switch Pro controller, and it was just I can't ever go back. It's just so much better.
Yeah.
This is the best money I ever spent. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to some housekeeping here, and then we'll continue on with our podcast. So I just want to remind everyone, actually, before we jump into that, let's go ahead and do our mystery character here. So we took a little break because we were talking about the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and we wanted to bring it back here. So basically, what this is every week we are going to have a mystery character where we're going to show the outline of a character, and the first one to guess it in the actual comments, not the chat, you're going to get a certain amount of points that we're going to track, and everyone that guesses right after that is going to get 1 point as well. but the person that gets it right first is going to get 2 points. And we're going to keep cataloging these points and the names, and eventually we are going to have some options for some games that we are going to cover in the future, like we did with the 7 remake and other games before that. And the people that took part in this are going to be able to vote, and the amount of points that you have are going to influence the amount of votes that you can vote for. So basically, if that was complicated for you, just be involved and you will be able to have your voice heard more so in the voting for our next game coming up. So I'm going to leave this up here and run through some of the stuff with our media partner at RPG Fan, and then we'll move on to our next topic.
I'll tell you this, this mystery character, you guys will never guess who it is ever. And I will bet Hat's PS4 on it.
What?
I don't think did you look at the latest character?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We'll never get it.
I'm pretty sure I know who it is, but if I'm wrong, I'm going to be surprised.
Well, we're not betting my PS4 on it. Okay. I don't feel comfortable with that wager. But anyways, so I just want to take a moment to remind you all about our media partner at rpgfan.com. If you're not familiar with them, they are an RPG news and game review website. They also have lots of other RPG podcasts on there. They have Random Encounter, which does more news and discussions that comes out twice a month. And then they have Retro Encounter, which is a book club styled RPG podcast where they basically just go super in depth with whatever RPG they're covering at the time. So that's really cool. I definitely recommend you go check those both out. And again, their website is rpgfan.com. Also check out their YouTube page that they're starting to put more YouTube content out with that. And you can see a lot of video versions of their written reviews. So that's really cool as well. I've actually been able to contribute some video footage to a couple of those games. For example, the Final Fantasy VII Remake, that was my game footage. Fire Emblem Three Houses, the DLC, The Outer Worlds. I'm trying to think. I think there was another one in there. But regardless, there's a lot of back and forth between us. So definitely go check RPG Fan out. Check out their podcast and check out their content. Right now, their latest review, they're a little late with this one, but it's still a pretty good review. I'd definitely go check it out, is Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of an Elusive Age for the Switch. So they just reviewed that, and I believe it got a 96%. So that's a very good score, and I don't think I would complain with that score. I think I'm in total agreement. It was a great game. So definitely go check that out.
Beautiful game. We even got our own review on it.
Yep. Speaking of which, I just want to give everyone an idea of some of the game discussions we have had on here. So just because I've noticed that some of our older discussions kind of are difficult to find here. So if you go all the way back to the beginning of our very first podcast episode, you're going to notice a lot of game review discussions that I'm not sure y'all are aware of. So let's just go through some of these. Recently, we just did a 3-part discussion on the Final Fantasy VII Remake. We did a 3-hour discussion on Crisis Core. We did a 4-hour discussion on Final Fantasy VII, the original. Our very first episode, we did a 3-part discussion, just me and Eric, on Final Fantasy 15. We also discussed Final Fantasy 13. We discussed Xenoblade Chronicles, Dragon Quest XI, Dragon Quest V, Kingdom Hearts 3, Knights of the Old Republic, and I think our 5th episode was Chrono Trigger. So a lot of good games there, and we're planning on doing more game discussions in the future. We might even revisit one of these games because, to be honest, some of our earlier episodes were kind of hit or miss, but I think our game discussions were all pretty good. We were pretty good about making sure those were quality. So definitely go check those out. But I think it's time to move on to our next topic here. So let's go ahead and get this off the screen here. All right, so our next topic is going to be the new Bandai Namco game that was announced at the non-Xbox gameplay presentation, where they showed no gameplay. But anyways, there's a new game. It's called Scarlet Nexus, and it was announced by Bandai Namco, and it's kind of an interesting game. Basically, if you go to their website, they give a big, huge synopsis, but It basically, I'll just read it. Why not? It says, in a far distant future, a psionic hormone was discovered in the human brain, granting people extrasensory power sand, changing the world as we know it. Just as humanity was entering this new era, deranged mutants known as others began to descend from the sky with a thirst for human brains, etc. Right? It's a sci-fi game. You kind of get the gist of it. But it's kind of interesting that it looks like a lot of people compared it to Code Vein, but Stan, I know that's kind of the direction you were going in. What did you think of when you first saw this trailer? I'm going to get it up here on the screen.
Yeah, when I saw this, first thing that jumped out to me was how bizarre it was with the enemy designs. Right, they're like very. I don't know even what's the best way to describe them. You can probably see them on the screen pretty soon.
It's like if Japan did an anime version of Last of Us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe too. Yeah, except it's kind of weird. Like one of the creatures had a wheel attached to its face. It was very strange. One thing I thought was cool though was that the developers that have worked on this, they said it was some of the leads that worked on Tales of Vesperia, and I really liked Tales of Vesperia. So, and they're promising a story-focused game. They said it's going to be a deep story-focused game, so that's got to be cool. But it looks like an action RPG. It looks like there's not a lot of UI on here, so I'm not even really sure if what they're showing is just, simulated gameplay, not actual gameplay, but it definitely looks really crisp and clean.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely nothing I found impressive about this trailer at all.
Nothing?
Nothing looks unique. The graphics, the graphics are okay, but they don't look like something I would show off on a PS5 or Xbox Series X console to show off how great it looks. I don't think it has any unique aesthetic to it to make up for it. It looks like your very generic anime.
Well, we
story
can't.
feels like, that website where it's like the anime generator website you can click on and it'll generate like a random anime synopsis for you, like vampire furry lover or something like that, goes to high school type of thing. I feel like someone clicked that and this came up. Now, I'm not bashing the final product. This is only just from seeing a preview. But like I said, even the gameplay doesn't look impressive. Like, it looks like there's something slow about it.
Well,
which doesn't look like they were trying to advertise it. It looked like they were trying to do some high-speed action type thing, and it looked kind of slow and methodical looking.
Well, what I would say, to just play little devil's advocate here, I would say is that we can't necessarily. We can, but we don't. I don't think if it's fair to critique the game for not living up to the Xbox. Like why would they show this as a game for the next gen Xbox? Because it's not a Microsoft game, right? It's a third party game. So on that front, I could see maybe they're just trying to show that they're going to have some of these lesser known JRPGs, whereas in prior Xbox history, they would usually get the big name RPGs, but they wouldn't get, a lot of the smaller stuff a lot of the times. So maybe
You're right. It doesn't have to be, but at the same time, it still does not make up the aesthetic viewpoint. The graphics still look like it's last PS3 gen, early PS4 gen to me. Like, it does not look impressive at all on the graphical front.
See, I think it's
I'll die on that hill if everyone wants to disagree with me.
I don't think the textures, particularly like the ground textures and stuff like that, look particularly impressive. But I think stylistically, like the cell shaded look, I think that looks very clean and well done. So I actually like it from that front. I know this game's coming out to other platforms, so this isn't going to be an Xbox exclusive, but if this was an Xbox exclusive, it wouldn't be enough to push me over the edge to buy an Xbox Series X, but it would get me a little bit more interested in the fact that they're having games like this come out on it. And that's
What
kind
is
of
it?
exciting.
Sorry, one more thing. Let me put it this way. Tales of Arise is not exactly a graphical powerhouse looking game.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that makes it set it apart, which makes me like think it looks very appealing, is that it has a unique aesthetic to it and it has unique character design to them that makes it look like it stands out. And the people are already pointing out that this game looks like Code Vein, in which Code Vein already kind of looks like your typical anime design characters. I don't think that really falls well with in terms of your unique character design. It's like we've seen, like if you look at the trailer again, we've seen these kind of character designs before. Like that's kind of more what I'm going with. I'm not necessarily worried about if it's like a graphical powerhouse game. That's not as important.
I gotcha. So you're more on the front that the character design and the monster design don't look original. It's kind of generic.
Yeah, I mean, I was just making that comment just because
Might
it
as
was on
well.
a Xbox Series X show that was to show off all the games that were coming for it. It's like it's just not a game that really shows that aspect off.
Right. Right. Yeah, I
Kind of
get
what I think they're kind of going for. I don't know if I really think they're trying to show off the powerhouse of the Xbox Series X, but the kind of vibe I'm getting from Xbox is historically they've never been a console you go to play JRPGs on. But being that they at E3 last year they had an advertisement for Tales of Arise, and at this one they had both this game Scarlet Nexus and then Yakuza, which isn't really a JRPG, but it's a game made in Japan. So
right.
it almost to me seems like they're trying to appeal to that audience a little bit to be like, hey, we'll have JRPGs on Xbox this generation, and I think overall, I think it's a good thing because the more competition we have that comes out of this between Xbox and PS4 in the JRPG department, the better games we're going to get in the end. So I'm happy to see these kind of games make it to Xbox.
Yeah.
I hope it works out because it didn't work out for Xbox the first time they try to push JRPGs. If anyone remembers that, I do hope that it becomes a more appealing thing because Microsoft is doing a lot of things right that I wish Sony was doing. Like their Xbox Game Pass is amazing.
Oh yeah, like Red Dead Redemption 2 came out on Game Pass last Friday, and I've been playing that a lot. So that's like the only reason I turn on my Xbox anymore is for Game Pass.
Wow, it's a
It's such a
AAA.
good deal.
It's a AAA game.
Yeah.
PC version of it, but they had Streets of Rage 4 that just came out on the Game Pass.
Yeah.
I was like either pay $30 or get it
Right.
basically for free.
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of the thing I'm looking at is I think that Microsoft is doing a lot of things right besides the way they named this event where this was shown, which was kind of silly. But aside from that, I mean, I think if this is a sign of them trying to pander to that market a little bit more, that might be a reason for me to buy an Xbox, because let's face it, I play a lot of JRPGs. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that might be a reason for me to pick the console up. If I start seeing lots of games, maybe a little less generic, right, than this one, but it seems like they're
So
trying
one
to
thing I
go
read,
that route.
I don't know, I'm afraid to mention it because I don't know how credible it was, but I did read somewhere where somebody was claiming this game would come to PC, PS4, and PS5.
I heard the same thing.
I have a hard time believing that they wouldn't put this game on the PS5 unless Microsoft is paying big bucks for an exclusive JRPG, which I find hard to believe.
Well,
we'll see what happens, I guess.
The current rumor mill is that because a lot of people were asking, why wasn't Tales of Arise at this showcase? Because that's a game that's supposed to come out this year, and that's a big game. That would be a big announcement, because we've where is Tales of Arise? It looked great.
Right.
Why aren't you Bandai Namco? Why aren't you, why aren't we seeing that? So people have pointed out that this has a lot of people that worked on Tales of Vesperia that have worked on this game, and people believe that this game was supposed to be originally some kind of Tales game that was earlier in development, and it ended up just going this weird route to where they're like, you know what, this doesn't really, this is getting a little off the beaten path for what a Tales game is. And so that's why
that'll be the deciding factor for me on if I buy this game or not, is if it plays more like an RPG, like a Tales of game, or maybe an Ys game, I am all for it. But if it's like an Astral Chain or a Code Vein, I'm a little less interested.
Right.
So we'll see what happens, I guess. It is encouraging to hear that Tales of Vesperia developers worked on it, because I love that game.
Yeah. As far as no Tales of Arise at this event or digital event or whatever their non-gameplay event.
The non-gameplay gameplay event?
Yes. I'm guessing it's because there's probably no next-gen version of that game coming in the near future.
That's a very good point. That's an obvious point I didn't think of.
So they can't show it on an Xbox Series X gameplay / non-gameplay showcase if it's only coming to Xbox One and PS4.
Well,
I wonder if the other thing is that maybe, being that we already know now that Tales of Arise is not an Xbox exclusive anymore, like when you first see it on Xbox at E3, you don't know for sure. You kind of assume that it's not going to be exclusive, but I wonder if because it's already been kind of revealed that it's not an Xbox exclusive, that they can't really, I guess Microsoft would probably have to pay them to show it off, or I don't know how that works, but
here's
kind of my guess anyway.
Yeah, well, here's the thing with this game, Scarlet Nexus. On their website, it says that it's got smart delivery. So this game is actually going to be available on both the original Xbox and the Xbox Series X. And so you can just buy it on the Xbox One if you don't have the upgraded console yet, and you can play it on there. And then if you buy a Series X, it'll just upgrade to that version. So that's really cool. And that might be kind of the reason too why this game looks a little like, oh, this isn't quite next gen, because it's not, it's not doing stuff that's only capable on the next gen.
I think Series X is just backwards compatible with all Xbox One games anyways.
Well, not all, because there's certain games, like I know a lot of the sports games are saying that they're not going to do it, or they're going to be very limited to where they'll only do it for the first month, because they don't want you to buy a Madden game for $2 and get it for the Series X when that's the more expensive version. Because
I mean, like, not offer the upgrade to it. But say like Tales of Arise doesn't have an upgraded version to Series X, you can still play the game on Series X. Like PS4s can be backwards or PS5s can be backwards compatible to 4.
I got
Series
you.
X can be backwards compatible to Series X. Like even if they don't offer an updated version to it, you can still pull it out of your Xbox One and put it in your Series X and use the cloud saving feature.
And I'd have to imagine that even if they don't have a version yet for that next console, that playing it on that new console would still give you a better frame rate. So you'd be able to play it at 4K instead of having to, if you wanted to keep it at a solid 60. Sometimes people now with the current consoles, they'll limit it to 1080p just to use the PS4 Pro's extra processing power to, keep that stable frame rate. So I suspect that if you did put it in the next console, you could still get some benefit out of that by being able to play in 4K at that constant frame rate, right? I don't know, but yeah. Very cool. So maybe not picking, we might pass on this RPG, but if there's some others, that'll be exciting. All right. So moving on to our community questions here. We have 2 questions from Shatera. These questions are submitted to us on Discord. So if you want to suggest a question for next week or, a future episode, you can join our Discord server. There'll be a link in the description. Go down there, join our Discord server, and just ask in there, and we'll get to it as we come by it. So the first question here is, what is your preference? Not which one you think is best, but what is your preference in between making a completely blank canvas character like Skyrim and playing the role you give yourself, or have a heavily outlined set character that you tried to put yourself in the shoes of, like Witcher. Why don't we start off with Stan? Why don't you, if you have thoughts prepared here?
Sure. Yeah. My preference is the latter, to have a character with kind of a set personality and, character, you know, um, even set character class, and put myself in the shoes of an existing character, essentially. Like Witcher, like, you know, um, pretty much any mainline Final Fantasy game, um, outside of the MMOs, right? Because those are the opposite, where you create your own character.
Right.
Um, Even games like Chrono Trigger, like I wish like Chrono had a little more of a personality to him. I wish he had lines and like reacted to the situations that he's put in.
Yeah, they kind
Um,
of just say he's kind of a rebel, a bit of a troublemaker, but you
yeah.
don't really see that he's a rebel or troublemaker.
hmm
You just kind of go with it.
He stole that guy's lunch at the festival. Remember?
You,
Well, only if you did. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
you made fun of
Just causing trouble, causing a ruckus.
Yeah. Or like we talked about Xenoblade Chronicles. The next game in that series, Xenoblade Chronicles X, is a like player created character who's just kind of has it, they don't have dialogue, but they just kind of have grunts and nods, like they just kind of react to every situation. They don't like have input like to the story, really like a pre-written character does.
Yeah.
So I usually prefer the latter. And I grew up playing Final Fantasy games, so that's probably where that preference came from.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I find that like with me, like I just prefer that character with like an actual background, because when I play a game where I created the character themselves, the stories just doesn't seem as tightly knit together, because like there's they try to give you like a dialogue tree where it gives me four options to say something, and I wouldn't say any of those four things. It's just, and like all the characters can't refer to you as your name, and they keep having to, you don't even have a gender, so there's no like it's just you might even be a beast creature, right? So it's just really different, but at the same time, if they had an Elder Scrolls game where like they're like, all right, the main character's name is Murphy, and I'd be like, this isn't Elder Scrolls. This doesn't
Right.
make sense.
Yeah.
There's a certain sandbox element to it where it's just you go out and do whatever you want. So, but I mean, Witcher has like a hybrid model of that a little bit, where they try to put their foot in both sides of the pond there. But yeah, I'm with you, Stan. I pretty much prefer that model.
hmm
it. It entirely depends for me. Um, if it's a game that's trying to accomplish focusing a very strong narrative, where the narrative pushes more of the game than the gameplay itself, I definitely want set characters for it representing that. Um, Kind of like similar to a movie, and sort of in that regard. I want to talk about the story with people and how it was. If it's a game that focuses more heavily on the gameplay aspects of progressing said story, kind of, for example, like Zelda Breath of the Wild, Link is for the most part a blank slate. He kind of has a background to him, but you reflect yourself into him and your actions. So you go and talk to friends and be like, "Oh, what did you do to reach the castle?" It's like, "Oh, well, I uh I uh I took a log and went down a river to get to the castle to climb up it." Or like someone goes, "I took my glider to get in there." And it creates interesting and awesome conversations like that too. So it's really what the game is aiming for. It's really hard for me to pick one or the other, because there's times where one side does it really well and the same for the other, and there's the times where both sides do it so awful.
I can think of an example where I think that the blank canvas character actually helped the story. And I think that was, and I'm not going to, I don't, let's not spoil this game, guys, but Knights of the Old Republic, the fact that you get to create your own character and the fact that they don't speak, there's various plot elements in that game that is built into that concept that you're basically a blank canvas when you start the game. You don't remember anything, and that allows certain elements to appear shocking, I guess, or not shocking, but just it adds to the plot twist. It kind of keeps that mystery around the character and the backstory, because you wouldn't even think your character had, this any backstory. So I think there are times where you can use that to your advantage, and that's one example I can think of.
Yeah, like The Witcher, like you said, is a good hybrid. The only thing I'd argue is that the choices you give Geralt to make do change the story, but I don't think it changes the character, though. The choices you're given in the game are still ones that you would believe Geralt would do, whether it feels like being aggressive or decided to be nice and tell the person to go away or something like that. It's
Right.
like both still are not out of character for Geralt. You can argue maybe some of them are, but ultimately it doesn't change who Geralt is at the end of the day. So I still find that like a more narrative
Well, and
tone. But it
yeah,
is that hybrid I really like though.
yeah.
Like I feel like I get to choose the path of the story, but I still get this awesome character I want to aspire to.
I think that I agree with that, and I think that Stan was onto something with the fact that he just brought up that he grew up playing Final Fantasy games, so maybe that's where some of his preference originated from. Because
Mhm.
I have a cousin that will not play games unless they're a complete blank canvas character. JRP, they won't play RPGs unless they're just let me create my own character, and it drives them nuts when you get a set character like that. And I just don't understand that, but that's what the way he grew up. And I've tried to have talks with him about it. Like, if you're playing for a story, would you buy a book where it's a choose your own adventure book? How come you don't read those books? Where it's like, do you want Harry Potter to enter the castle, or do you want to go to the village? Go to
Right.
page 42 if you want to go to the like, you don't like that. You want a set character because the story's better. But
Yeah.
like to him, it's a game, and like it should he should be allowed to, make his character a 9-foot lizard with, red eyes if he wants. And that's what he's used to. So I guess part of it just comes down to what you've gotten used to. So
Imagine playing like an Uncharted game where Nathan Drake was not the main character.
yeah, the
right?
story
And
would
you,
suck.
yeah, the game suddenly loses almost all appeal for me.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, like I said, I would not sure if I would play Elder Scrolls 6 starring Murphy,
Yeah.
the Dragonborn. I mean, I
Yeah.
might, but
I think it really boils down to if like the setting is the most important part of the game, because Eric also mentioned Zelda, right? And like if the goal is like to immerse you like in a world, right, then it makes more sense to take um less focus on the story and more so on like the setting, like an Elder Scrolls game, right, which is very like open and you just kind of wander and do quests, and the story suddenly becomes about all the things that happen to you, right, like to your character. It's more of a
you observe the story. Yeah.
yeah, it's more of a, like an emergent story that happens as a result of your choices rather than a story being dictated to you. So I agree with Eric that like both have their purpose. Both approaches have their purpose. I just prefer the latter version. Yeah.
Yeah, I think both ways work perfectly fine. If there's some people that believe that you want to build a world and then make a game within that world, and then there's some people that want to make a game and then base that world off its gameplay. And both versions work perfectly fine. It's just it's execution at the end of the day.
Yeah. Lane, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with you guys. Generally, I always prefer to put myself in the shoes of a character. There are just a few exceptions to the rules. RPGs that are more sandboxy, like Elder Scrolls, I would obviously prefer creating my own character. But one game that comes to mind that I think did the hybrid really well is the Mass Effect games.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can play either just the default Commander Shepard, male or female, and you can go through that game. Basically, you can either be Paragon, which is sort of the good Commander Shepard, or the Renegade Shepard, which is sort of the more not wouldn't say evil, but maybe I don't know, I can't think of the word. But anyway, I think that's good because if you don't want to do the default Shepherd, you can create your own character from scratch if you want to, and you can just choose your dialogue as you want. So I think that's a game that I think did a really good sort of hybrid system to kind of please both crowds, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
example. I didn't even think about that. That the fact that you get to choose between the gender, but then also your player choice kind of creates another class in of itself almost in the narrative. So yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
example. Well, all right. So we have one more question here. We have another one from Shotero who says, "Do you grow /equip /use your characters in a way the game hints at with the character's stats and characterization, or take that character and try to push them in the opposite direction of the class role the game seemed to give them?" I always go with the way the story goes the first time through.
Same. I have no desire to break the character away from what he's meant to be. Like if he's a big, strong guy wielding a big axe, breaking boulders, I'm not going to make him a magic user.
Yeah, like with Final Fantasy X, for example, if you play the international version or the re-releases, you can do the expert sphere grid. And so you could make Lulu like go down Orin's path first, for example. And that's never appealed to me to have Lulu just like killing it, and with her little Moogle. That's never appealed to me.
But why though?
I don't know. I like it when I get to the end of the game and I can go start learning other classes. That's cool. But I don't know. That just seems silly to me. I'm not going to make Bosch a white mage. That doesn't work. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
So, does anybody
Yeah.
have anything else they want to add to that?
The only time that I will really branch out, Dragon Quest XI comes to mind. So if I tried to with that game, I tried to be kind of have diversity in my party, as in like, so I started out my main hero just doing sword and shield build. So like when I got Sylvando, for example, he starts out as a sword and shield build, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I already have a sword user. I'm going to make him use whips. So if I need to, do a group of enemies or whatever, maybe I need to whip for some reason, right? So that's really the only time I will branch out is if I need to cover like an area in my party that's not covered already. But for the most part, I try to stick to what a character is good at. Like, Jade, for example, has some really good abilities with the spear, and Eric has good knife abilities. So I try to focus first. I try to focus what the character is good at, and then I try to fill any gaps that may be missing.
You want to kill metal slimes, you better have Eric on knives and Jade on spear.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, sometimes I'll experiment a little bit, if I want someone to have some healing spells or something like that, just to kind of back up. But I'll usually don't go. If the game will give me that option, I might play around a little bit, but I don't go all out. So just me.
Yeah, I do the same. About 90% of the time, I would say I play into the character's strengths, like kind of the way they're supposed to be built, or at least the way that the game suggests that you use the character. I try to increase their strengths and then use the other characters to cover up the weaknesses of the other characters, right? And that makes it feel like they're a really solid team, right? If the characters all need each other in some way.
Right.
But then I also like, even in games where I could, like Final Fantasy VII, you can tweak the materia setup and put it on any character and it works. But I never make Cloud the white mage, because that's
Yeah, I'll put
wielding this massive sword. It just doesn't make sense to me visually. Like, why would this guy be the white mage? It's like, no, that highest level cure materia I have, it's going on Eris or Red 13 or Tifa or somebody else.
See, I would put some cure on Cloud I would put Cure on Cloud, and usually I would put, Revive or Life or whatever on him as well. But that's only as a secondary or third option. I would have my White Mage designated, you are the person that heals, but I still want him to have something just in case those other two characters die. But he wouldn't be the primary. I wouldn't be putting, all the other stuff on there as well.
Yeah. And then like Final Fantasy X also, like I typically don't break the characters from their deviated path unless I'm doing a playthrough where I just want to do really silly stuff like you've said. And though that game has Kimari, who has no like designated role, and I think I try and do something different with him just about every time. So
yeah. Eric doesn't use Kimari.
Yeah.
Right? Wasn't it you that said you hate Kimari?
I don't hate Kimari as a character. I just hate how he's used in the dynamic of the party. Because, all right, so if FF10 at least gave the characters you don't use half EXP and gave full EXP to the characters you did use, that would balance out the game so much better. And I would be willing to experiment with Kimari some. But with the rock, paper, scissors formation the game has until pretty much you get to the end of the game, like you have Titus kill the fast ones, you have Arin kill the ones that need piercing, Yuna heals, Lulu black magic, Waka kills with the flying enemies, and even Riku, who you can debate how much purpose she has, she at least can steal items. She can instantly kill robots with steel. And some of her items are very useful for boss battles. Kimari, you have to force into the group.
See, if you're going on a no sphere grid challenge, which is different, but that's where you play the whole game without using a sphere grid. Suddenly, Riku becomes your most valuable character because you just have to farm for items nonstop to craft. So her abilities there are very useful, and then Kimari, because he can learn other abilities as well, really comes in handy.
I never did try that with Riku. It doesn't. Can't she make like the super powerful bomb or something?
Yeah, she's technically the most powerful in the game if you do all this stuff, but she doesn't come. It's not easy,
She's your best healer when Yuna's not in the party.
Okay. I might have to try this on my next playthrough of 10.
One of the most useful things you can do with Kimari is send him actually to Yuna's area, and then you get
Beset Island.
What's that?
Beset Island. You said
no.
Oh, on the sphere grid.
Like,
okay,
on the sphere grid, like
I thought you meant her home.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. You send him over there, and you pick up like all the null spells and everything.
Yeah.
And like he has healing as well, and it boosts his magic, and like some of his overdrives, like the fire breath and the aqua breath that hit all the enemies, that's based on his magic stat. So you can actually boost his magic, and then his overdrive suddenly become way more useful. So that's one thing I've done. And then also you can, if you don't want to do that, you could send him to Riku's path and get him over there before Riku is even in your party. And then you can start stealing things from the enemies before like she's even joined the group. So I think those are the two most useful things I've found how to use them. But I try and do something different every time.
Anyways, we got off on a tangent there.
Yeah.
What was the original question? Do you grow or equip your characters in a way a game hints at? Okay. Yes.
Typically I do, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's going to wrap us up for this week again. And we want to thank Lane for coming on the podcast this week. Your YouTube channel, The Laneinator, is in the description of this podcast episode. And so you can go on there and, check out his YouTube page and subscribe. Highly recommend you do. Thank you, Lane, again for coming on. And
Thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah.
Coming on.
And we will see you all next week. Thank you, guys.
Take care.